Back to the Rogue's Passage for another Commander deck tech. Let's get into it. How's it going, everybody? I'm Brando, and today we're going to be talking about Helga Skittish Seer. Now, this is one of my absolutely favorite new commanders coming out of the last few sets. It's a BANT 3-pip, and it seems to be a trend with me about these 3-pip creatures that care about like mana value or power for something. It's becoming a bit of a problem. Helga Skittish Seer. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card, gain a life, and put a +1/+1 counter on her. She kind of just does it all. She also has tapped at X mana of any one color, where X is equal to her power. That mana can only be spent on creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or creature spells with X in their cost. So she's a very like creature care sort of deck, and I've had a lot of fun with this. It's been like in a constant state of like brewing and rebrewing because I keep finding cards or new synergies or new weird combos that I want to play. And it's nice to have a deck that seems to just like never, like it's unfinished. It's always evolving, which I think is just really, really cool. So the base idea for this deck going into it is kind of like, obviously it's creatures with mana value 4 or greater. So that is what a majority of the deck is. And then we got a little bit of X spell stuff. It's really just doing everything that we can to maximize value, both out of Helga and the cards that we're casting. Right off the rip, Burn, which right now is just one. There's a couple other cards that I plan on like shifting in here over time, but for right now, just the one, because we don't really need it, and you'll see why later. But Psychosis Crawler. Power and toughness equal to the number of cards in my hand. We're drawing cards, so that's pretty decent. But whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life, and we tend to draw a fair amount of cards, so it's good at bringing those life totals down. We have copies, and both of these are powerhouses that do just phenomenal work. Volo, whenever I cast a creature spell, if it doesn't share a creature type with something that I already control or in my graveyard, you copy it. So there is a lot of varied creature types, but there is a lot that kind of like goes over the same. So you're not going to be copying every creature in this deck, but for the ones that it does matter, it matters, and it can make a huge difference. Even just leaning into the second one, Progenitor Mimic, which it will make a copy of if you don't have another shapeshifter. But Progenitor Mimic, tried and true classic, enters a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except at the beginning of your upkeep, you create another token copy of it. You can see how that can get out of hand really, really fast. We have our counters. And these are the things that are very specifically just here to put counters on other things. It's more specifically than anything Helga, but just give all of the creatures in the deck a little bit of juice, because most of the time the creatures don't necessarily matter too much in the context of like, hey, we know what we're doing, and we know that we're eventually going to get there to being able to like slap face and win. We have Clay Champion, enters the battlefield with 3 counters for each green spent to cast it, or 2 green spent to cast it. And when it enters the battlefield, choose up to 2 other target creatures you control for each 2 white spent to cast it. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of them. So obviously we love to cast that and bring that down for Helga. Specifically, we buff her up, which then allows us to cast more things, but juicing up other things as well, and just being a creature that can potentially enter really strong as well. Followed by Railroad Brawler, same kind of idea, enters the battlefield, or whenever another creature enters the battlefield, put X counters on it, where X is its power. Usually it's not going to see Helga. We're going to have Helga out to cast it, and then every other creature in this deck is just entering juiced as heck. Along with Tanzir Quandrix, similar sort of thing. It enters the battlefield, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature I control. It's just to juice up Helga. Whenever it attacks, you may have base power and toughness of other creatures you control become equal to Tanzir Quandrix power and toughness until end of turn, which starts as a 4/4 with something like Railroad Brawler or Clay Champion that could potentially be higher, but it's always going to bring everything up to power 4 into draw. And draw is the name of the game for this deck. So realistically, right, we have Brainstorm, obviously. Hydroid Crisis, X spell, gain half X life and draw half X cards. Either way, it's coming in strong because it enters with X counters. Filling your hand, gaining a little bit of life back. Nice flying trample blocker. Abundance, we draw so many cards, and there's so much to this deck that will help feed land onto the battlefield that we generally aren't wanting for land draw. We want to be drawing more creatures, so this helps us kind of cycle through that. Beast Whisperer, whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, doubling up on that. Paradoxical Outcome is sort of a pseudo protection spell for me, as well as keeping the engine going in case something happens and it like stifles it. Return any number of target non-land, non-token permanents you control. draw cards equal to each of those cards that were returned to your hand this way. So I can recast half of everything and just keep the kind of chain going. Helga's getting bigger, we're gaining more life, we're drawing more cards, we're drawing more cards, we're drawing more cards. Teferi's Ageless Insight, if you would draw a card, except the first one in your draw steps, you draw 2 instead. So every time we hit Helga. Tulane, Teller of Tales, very similar to Helga, and sort of this is the old version of what Helga is. Vigilance, whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, pay 3, return a creature you control to its owner's hands. So another little bounce protection. Mr. Foxglove, he's just so much fun and is one of those weird like chaos nonsense that I always love to add into my decks, where whenever he attacks, draw cards. It's a little convoluted. Whenever he attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So we get to like cheat things out a little bit, getting a little bit of that lifelink, potentially drawing cards. It's all around just no matter what's happening, he's usually doing something beneficial. Same with Muldrifter. Everybody knows Muldrifter, ETBs, draw 2 cards, you can evoke it. Whether it be evoking or hard casting, this thing always just performs well in this deck. And even with the evoke cost, it is still seeing that top CMC. So we are always going to be getting that Helga trigger off of it, even if it's evoked in. It's just good value. Sabsunin kind of only got put into this deck because it's like a Simic thing that draws cards, like it fits into the theme, and it's Frog God. Like, come on, for my Frog commander. There's better cards that could take place of this, but I just love this card in here. 5-drop, Reach, Trample, Indestructible, which is very strong, very nice, but it can't attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on it. 0 counts as even, but at the beginning of your first main phase, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then if it has an odd number of counters on it, draw 2 cards. So it's basically 1 turn, it's an attacker blocker, 1 turn, it's drawing me cards. So it's, again, another one of those things where no matter what, there's always some kind of value coming out of it. We have our finishers. And truth be told, yeah, these things do finish games pretty dang well. Pathbreaker Ibex, whenever it attacks, creatures you control gain trample and +X/+X until end of turn. So it's kind of like Crater Hoof. If you're not looking to necessarily go wide, you just need that sort of boost in power and trample. With Pathbreaker, Ibex does very well. And these two pair wonderfully together, because if I Pathbreaker and then I'm able to cast a Nexus of Fate, well, everybody's in for a very bad time. A Nexus of Fate, take an extra turn. And if I would put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. It's pretty good. I've been able to like have a couple of games where this is chained off of just like lucky draw / all of the other draw shenanigans, bringing in like great heat and that art. Just everything about this specific art is just so lovely. Like this weird wizard's journey through some like ethereal, surreal world. Oh, it's so good. We have our lands, and it's a pretty basic land package. We've got good lands, we've got bad lands. Always try to play at least one thing that can destroy another land. You always want to potentially get rid of your strip mines or your maze of iths. And things like Ghost Quarters will do it. But yeah, basic land where we've got some fetches, we've got some duels, we've got some shock lands. A Reliquary Tower, obviously, because, you know, when we're drawing a lot of cards, we want to draw a lot of cards. Landfall, this is the only thing that's landfall in this deck. It's not really even necessary for landfall. It just plays with what the rest of the deck is kind of trying to want to do in a sneaky way. It's just a 1/1 creature, unassuming. The real kicker is the bestow cost. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Nice little early game buff to Helga or something else, but usually Helga. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a green and a generic. If it's attached to a creature, you create a token that's a copy of that creature. So if it's not attached to Helga, if it's attached to literally any of our other creatures, obviously non-legendary, but our Muldrifters, our Beast Whisperer, just anything that's not legendary, and even then some of the things that are legendary but have ETBs, where just every time we play a land, being able to copy and get a trigger of that is really, really, really strong. We have our protection. Legolas's Quick Reflexes is probably one of the most goated cards in Magic, in my opinion. Split Second, first of all, strong as heck. Means it can't be responded to on the stack. As long as the spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. So you just kind of can't respond to it. Untap target creature. Almost always this is towards Helga to ensure that we can double up on her mana dork abilities and be casting a bunch of creatures over and over again. But the kicker here is until end of turn, it gains hexproof, reach, and whenever this creature becomes tapped, it deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature. So it can based off of some of the other stuff in this deck, act as almost like a sequential board wipe, right? We're pinging for damage, pinging for damage, pinging for damage while we're casting more things, and she's just getting bigger and bigger. Swiftfoot Boots, obviously a little bit of hexproof and haste. A Chrome as well, also kind of a finisher, but it's in protection because more often than not, I do not use this to like cast and kill. This is where usually somebody ends up casting something that has a ton of creatures or tries to cast a board wipe, something. Chrome as well is usually my go-to protection and can be a finisher if need be, but it gives basically every keyword protection from all colors, indestructible life. Like it does good work, especially in a deck like this. Seer's Viper's Fang. Other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch, so all of our swingers, especially once we have like something like giving them trample, like the Pathbreaker. Other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof, which is just juicy, giving protection to all of my board state that hasn't swung or has yet to swing. And pay 1 tap, untap another target creature or land you control. You can untap a land if you just need that one last mana for another spell, or untap Helga to cast more creatures. Teferi Mage of Zhalfir gives my creatures flash, and it makes each opponent can only cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. So it turns off counter spells, it turns off instant speed removal. Archetype of Endurance, just a good old fashioned creature. Creatures you control have hexproof, creatures your opponents control lose and can't have or gain hexproof. And then similarly, Avacyn, Angel of Hope. Flying, Vigilance, Indestructible. Other permanents you control have Indestructible. Our ramp, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Thought Vessel, like, our basic mana rocks. And we have one of my favorite cards in Magic out of the Warhammer 40k Borosist. Green XX, Ravenous 5. So if X is 5 or more, enters with those counters and you draw a card. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to X basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. That right there is the big juice of it, because most of the time, especially with Helga, this is like a little bit later in the game. We're basically fetching for the rest of the basic lands out of our deck, putting them on the battlefield, and I gotta tell you that generally tends to sway ahead in our favor. Biophagus, it's just a mana dork for any color. If it's used on a creature, they enter with an additional counter. Beautiful for when casting Helga. Elysian Caryatid, add 1 mana of any color. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, add 2 mana of any one color. So just a nice, good mana dork for 2. Kiyora's Follower, untap another target permanent. Generally for Helga, can also be lands. Poison Dart Frog, little mana dork. You can pay to give it Death Touch, and it's got reach. Also Frog. Who doesn't love to just keep on the frogs? A Sunscape Familiar, green and blue spells, cost 1 less to play. Our Cultivate, our Kodama's Reach, Goreclaw, creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less. Again, there's a lot of that in this deck. And whenever they attack, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample. Inga and Essica turns all of my creatures into mana dorks of any color. And whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. Toxicrane. This is one of my favorites, and this is more of a group hug card in here than anything, as well as just being like nice little defense. Reach, Death Touch, all lands have tap to add 1 mana of any color and lose all other abilities. Karametra, God of Harvests, Indestructible. If it's a creature, then it's a 6/7 that's going to be doing some good work for us. Otherwise, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains, put it on the battlefield tap, shuffle through your library. Seedborn Muse, a green staple, untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. That's just, it's so strong, especially when you consider like Teferi, and I'm able to just keep flashing in more and more creatures and just letting the board state build and build and build. And then Kodama of the East Tree, whenever a permanent you control enters, if it wasn't put on the battlefield with his ability, you may put a permanent with equal or lesser mana value from your hand on the battlefield, which you can do lands too. Realistically, every single land now can be 2 lands. You play a land lesser or equal, you play a land off of that. Our Recursion, it's basically just Green Warden of Marasa, and this lovely little card is part of one of the niche combos that exists in this deck that I will get to in a moment. Whenever it enters the battlefield or when it dies, you may exile it. If you do, return target graveyard or target card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, our removal package is pretty big for this deck because we tend to experience a lot of removal from opponents, because obviously you've seen the pieces that are already in there so far. People are itching to get rid of half of our board state. Path to Exile, Pongify, Swords of Plowshares, our Beast Within. And then we wouldn't be in BANT if part of the removal package wasn't a fair amount of counter spells. And we tried to keep it conservative. I don't like to play a lot of counter spells, but it's always necessary to have something to protect your game plan. We have Arcane Denial, counter target spell. Its controller may drop to 2 cards at the next turn's upkeep. I draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. It's card draw and a counter spell. Love it. A classical counter spell. How do you ever hate on classic old counterspell? Now, this is the card I was talking about that works in unison with Green Warden of Marasa, Familiar's Ruse. As an additional cost to cast Familiar's Ruse, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. Counter target spell. So you can probably see on the wall how those work together of, oh, we cast that, whatever's returned to battlefield, it doesn't matter, it's on board, cool. We cast Familiar's Ruse because we need to counter something, we bounce the Green Warden back to hand. When we have the ability to play it, or we have the mana, we cast Green Warden Marasa, we get Familiar's Ruse back, rinse and repeat. It's not really infinite, but it's an infinite counterspell if you've got the ability to generate the mana for it and have the flash to be able to cast out the Green Warden on a regular basis. It's won me more than a few games being able to just consistently recur a counterspell that counters any spell. Yeah, Rampaging Yao Guai is a lovely creature and probably one of my favorites. It's an X cost, enters with counters on it, Vigilant Trample. When it enters the battlefield, destroy any number of target artifacts and or enchantments with total mana value X or less. So you can pump into that to remove big board states of things, of like lots of artifacts or enchantments. But the sole reason that this card is in this deck is to combat things like Smothering Tithe, where very specifically X can be 0, and it's not about the amount that I pay into it, it's about the mana cost of the total things being destroyed, and things like treasures don't have mana value. So you cast this for 3 pips, that X is 0, you are destroying all treasures. Anything that does not have a mana value in terms of artifacts or enchantments is getting blown up by this, and it is so useful. It has saved so many games of somebody's got 80 plus treasures and we needed an answer. That's your answer. Silverback Elder. This is another juice staple of removal in this deck, because whenever you cast a creature spell, again, we already know we're doing a lot of that, either destroy target artifact or enchantment, look at the top 5 cards of your library for a land, put it on the battlefield, or you gain for life. So it's another little like boost. It's very situational and very useful, where every single time I cast a creature spell, I'm getting one of 3 modal abilities to what do I need right now. Probably the rudest card in this deck, Hullbreaker Horror. Flash, can't be countered. When you cast a spell, choose one, either bounce something from the battlefield back to somebody's hand, or bounce something on the stack back to somebody's hand. And when you are casting a lot of spells, and this deck does tend to have nice big chain turns where we're casting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things, are all of our opponent's pieces that are in our way generally go away as soon as we start hitting the Hullbreaker. We have our tokens. Termagant Swarm and Turvagon are sort of the exact same in slightly different ways. Both Tyranids as well, both with the Ravenous. Termagant Swarm, when it dies, you create a number of 1/1s equal to its power. So it's just kind of a big juicy X spell creature that I can use to synergize with Helga, have it as a blocker. If somebody tries to board wipe, all of a sudden I'm not totally out of the park. I have a bunch of 1/1s. And then Turvagon is basically the same thing, except it's trample, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you create 1/1s equal to the damage dealt. Vrestin and Coma, both of these juicy cards. Vrestin, X spell, it enters with X counters on it, and you create X 1/1 green and white alien insect creature tokens with flying. But with that, whenever you attack with one or more insects, put a counter on each of them. So those little 1/1s get out of hand very, very quickly. Same with Coma. Can't be countered. Beginning of each upkeep, you create a 3/3 coil. Everybody's probably seen or come across a Coma. You can sacrifice one of those serpents to either tap something down and its activated abilities can't be activated, or give Coma indestructible till end of turn. Nice little protection or big stifle for our opponents. Our untap package. Everything here untaps. It's either untapping one thing, untapping multiple things, or more specifically, artifact or creature, untap another target permanent, untap another target permanent, untap another target permanent. Murkfiend Liege, specifically, is a nice little buff to Helga and all of our blue and green creatures. Untap all green or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. Now, Chakram Retriever and Pemin's Aura are 2 heaters in this deck. Chakram Retriever, whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap target creature. This allows me to very often chain off with Helga, assuming that I'm drawing into more creatures and more creatures, because as long as I can untap Helga with this and cast another creature or any spell, we're untapping Helga to cast a creature, to untap Helga to cast a creature. It's one of the strongest powerhouses for a deck like this, and if you're not running this in your untap blue colored decks, you need to right away. It's so strong. Penman's Aura. It's an enchantment, and one of the strongest blue enchantments I think exists in Magic. Pay a blue, untap, enchanted creature. Pay a blue, enchanted creature gains flying until end of turn, which is a lovely little evasion, especially if somebody doesn't have the blockers, the flying blockers for Helga, and she's big enough. We can all of a sudden do commander damage. Pay a blue, give a creature Shroud until end of turn. Can't be the target of spells or abilities, which is one of the most potent things specifically. Guaranteeing that I get to give solid protection to Helga no matter what is happening, as long as I have at least one blue open, which is so very useful. And then pay one generic enchanted creature gets +1/-1 or -1/+1 until end of turn. So you can kind of use that to avoid certain things. Oh, a certain spell is dealing so much damage and you can pay to make your toughness above that. Awesome. Or otherwise, you flip your toughness down right down to 0 and turn Helga into whatever you need her for, whether that be commander damage, tapping from her mana. Very strong utility there. This is probably one of my strongest decks. Most of us here at the Rogues play mostly mid-rangey stuff, but even as it comes to mid-range, very few of our player base has been able to consistently deal with the problem that is Helga. Because as soon as the ball gets rolling for a commander like this, it's really hard to stop it, especially with the amount of protection that we're playing. It's so much fun, and who doesn't love having a mana dork in the commander that draws you cards and gains you life? She really does kind of all of it. But yeah, that's my Helga Skittish Seer deck. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know if there's anything that you think I should add to it, anything that I'm missing, any real specific heaters that could just bring the power level of this thing up ridiculously. Let me know any and all of that down in the comments below. And until next time, everybody, have a good one. Bye!